Hey, it's Carly with LaunchCode. In this video, we're going to add delete functionality to our coding events application. So in the last video, we created this, what we refer to as a data layer. We created this class called event data to both house our event collection and define a number of data management operations that can be done on that collection. And one of those methods that we created was this remove method. So now we're just going to do the work to add this feature to our application. The steps to remove an event are going to look very similar to what we've already done to add an event to our application. So the first step is going to be creating the action methods that is responsible for delete events form, this view. So this is this action method doesn't need any parameters. Again, going to look similar to what we've created for adding an event. We want to ultimately return that new view that we're creating, and that view is going to also live at events delete. But we do, because the nature of that page is going to deal with event data that already exists, unlike the add event form, we need this form to actually know about our data. So we're going to add a view bag property, as we have done in a couple of cases, and that's going to be just the whole list of events. That way, when a user comes to this form, they'll be able to access a list of events and choose which ones they want to delete. Okay, so the definition of this action method responsible for getting this page is just returning a view that, because of these naming conventions, will exist at /events/delete. So we want to, in order to create this new view, we're going to go into our events view folder, create a new file, razor view, and we'll call it delete so that the routing works as we expect. Okay, so what's going to be on this page? Well, we mentioned we want a form, so we can start there. And let's also give it a title. So, one advantage of giving it a title is if for whatever reason the C# logic within your form doesn't work, at least you can verify that some portion of the view is existent. This form is, we're going to be editing our data, so it is going to be posting. We'll have it just post to the same location that it's located at. So we're not going to add an action method. It's going to post to /event/delete. And inside of this form, essentially what we're going to do is loop over the events that we've added to that view bag property. We're gonna list those events, every single one, and what we'll do is we'll add the view will be a checkbox input for each of those events, and then the user can check the events that they want to delete. So they'll be able to delete more than one at a time via this form. So with the form in place, let's add that C# logic. So this is going to be another for each loop, and we're going to say for each event in viewBag dot events, create an input. And this input is going to be of type checkbox. And the name of each of these items is we're going to call event IDs, again, because the user will be able to submit multiple. So we'll talk more about how that works shortly. And then the value of these checkboxes is going to be the actual ID, because recall that our remove method within event data takes the event ID as its parameter to locate and remove an event from the list or from the collection. Okay, so let's just kind of add some other elements around this guy to make it not so bare. First off, a label is pretty essential so that we can identify which event we're deleting, and we'll just identify them based off of the event name. And let's also put this inside of a div, and we're going to give it some bootstrap class just to practice with that. Each one of these will be in a form group. Okay, so that'll list those checkboxes that we talked about. Lastly, for our form, we need to be able to submit it. And we'll give this guy some bootstrap classes too. It'll be a button. Let's call this button danger to kind of give a visual warning that they're about to do something that they can't reverse. Okay, so with that in mind, now if you were working on your own, I'd suggest you pause now if you're coding along, and you can test this out. Just enter the URL /event/delete, and you'll see a view that has this information. If you don't see a view, if you do return an error, that's a good indication that maybe there's some typos going on. But this is just a good place to start testing in smaller chunks. We have enough changes in play already, but we're going to keep going just for efficiency's sake. So now we're asked to add the action method that handles the submission of that form. Now, we haven't quite established a naming convention for ourselves for these action methods that are paired up between retrieving a form view and processing the submission of that form view. So in the case of the add action, we have this add method that gets the add form itself, and then we have a method that we call new event, which is responsible for processing the form submission. Something else that we can do that I don't think we've taken advantage of yet in the class is we can actually name these action methods the same name as each other and make use of our request type attributes. So this attribute determines that this delete method here is responsible for post requests, which means that when the path /event/delete is reached, that this delete method will only be called in instances of HTTP post, therefore taking precedence over this delete method, which doesn't specify which request it responds to. Now this post handler is going to be different in that it is going to take a parameter, so it does need to take the information that's submitted from that form, which remember we called event IDs, which is actually an array of, or can be an array of integers. So each event object has an ID property which is an integer, but the form itself allows for a user to submit more than one, to check more than one box, to say I want to delete more than one event. So that's why we're calling, event IDs. So that's why we're pluralizing that parameter, or the name of those checkbox inputs. So what does that look like? So that looks like a user can submit only one item to be deleted, and this parameter will be able to handle that as one, but a user can also submit multiple. And I encourage you to check out the network tab on your running application once the form is submitted, so you can see how these are coming through in the request. But what we want to do when we inside of this method, so once the events come through, we want this action method to again loop over, this time looping over the IDs themselves. And use that event data method to just remove those items. Now remember, the remove method that we wrote in event data just takes one ID, just takes one integer in the form of an ID, and locates the event and removes the whole thing from the dictionary. So lastly, this is an action method, so we need to return something. In this case, we want to, once the user's selected which items they want to remove, we want to just return back to our events homepage. That way, they can easily see via that table which items they've removed. Okay, so this is another great space to test what we've added so far. That's it as far as the delete functionality goes. I just want to add one more thing. Back in our homepage for the events, we had, when we added the add functionality, we added this link to allow a user to easily access that view. We just want to do the same thing for delete so that we don't have to test by simply typing into the URL directly. Okay, so now with this link added to our events homepage, it just makes it a little bit easier. Well, it makes it easier for a user to access the option of deleting an event. They don't have to put that information into the URL directly. Okay, so let's run the application and test all of this out. We've made quite a bit of changes, so we do have some significant testing to do. Well, first of all, what I would expect is this delete events item. I'd expect that clicking on it is going to take us to this new delete events page that we have without any information. We don't have a list of checkboxes here, so we'll have to add some events to test that data. I guess ideally on this page we could also add an additional conditional that says, there's no events yet to be deleted, if that viewbag.events is empty. Now, if we click on this button, the submit button, without any information, I do expect that our post handler, as it's written, that action method to handle the submission of this form will do just fine. It will be able to loop over nothing essentially and still return the home page, which it does. So that's good. Next, let's add some events. We'll add some of the classic guys that we've been adding before. And then with adding these events, what we want to do is, I'm just gonna, what we want to do with adding multiple events is test deleting them. We want to test both deleting one and then deleting multiple. Let's do Grace Hopper. Oops. Okay. So let's first, let's test it out. We'll do delete events. Okay, so this looks like a little weird. We could maybe do some better Bootstrap styling here, but we do have some checkboxes. Let's see, can we check them? Yes, we can, so that's good. We can interact with them. Let's first try deleting the first one, this first event. Okay, great. So we're taken back to our home page, and that event is gone from the list. So that is good. Oops, I didn't want to do that. I want to actually, we can also add the delete item up here too, to that nav bar. So let's add another one. Let's add queer text symposium. And once that's added, let's go and try and delete both of these guys. Okay, awesome. So they're both gone. So that's exactly what we would expect with this delete functionality.